Not far from the home of the famous Gruyère cheese, along the border between the cantons of Fribourg and Vaud, is Vanil Noir, a jewel that towers above the Alpine foothills. Standing at barely 2,400 meters, it's among Switzerland's smaller mountains. But its rocky summit captivates with rugged beauty and forms the heart of a nature reserve. Early in the morning, when most people are still sleeping, Patrick Romonance, the gamekeeper, makes his way to check on the Alpine Ibex, or wild mountain goats. Where exactly to look for these animals in the 15 square kilometer reserve is something that he doesn't know himself. In summertime, when hikers populate the mountain trails, he often needs to climb quite high. Checking up on the Ibex regularly is crucially important, especially since a disease decimated the herd by 1/3 some 3 years ago. His stubbornness is paying off.
Their condition is quite good, and their numbers have even increased a bit. The young from last year have all survived. One of my responsibilities is to monitor the animals' health. I check them for diseases and also make sure that grazing cattle, which spend all summer up here, are fine. We need to make sure that there is no contact between grazing livestock and the wild animals.
It's assumed that the losses were due to a hoof disease that was passed to the Alpine Ibex by either cows or sheep. After several mild winters, their condition is once again stable, but discussions about the environmental impact of animal husbandry have not died down. Under what circumstances are grazing animals of benefit? And where do they start to encroach on untamed nature? Many environmentalists would prefer not to have farm animals at all in such biodiversity hotspots. At least not high up on the mountains, where a wide and exceptional variety of flora and fauna thrives in rugged remoteness.
For me, this is incredibly fulfilling. It's sensational, time and again, to watch the animals. I love it. I could observe them for hours. It simply overwhelms me.
The Vanil Noir, a spot where time stands still. An area that is quite simply enchanting. Nature enthusiasts consider it a highlight of the Swiss mountain world. This reserve, remote from the better-known mountains, boasts an extraordinary wealth of most diverse habitats. Early in the morning, when the sun clips the mountain ridge, is when the day begins for butterflies. These delicate insects have found a very special refuge in the valley of Saint-Picard on the Vanil Noir's southeast-facing slope. Over 100 types of butterflies and moths live here on just 10 square kilometers. An abundant flora and disparate biotopes are behind this remarkable diversity. Vincent is particularly interested in the enchanting butterflies. It's a mission of love. He's nurtured an interest in butterflies since his early youth and has become one of Switzerland's foremost butterfly experts, publishing a volume identifying over 200 species. To make a precise determination, he usually captures them for a brief moment.
Voilà. Oh, magnifique.
Absolutely magnificent. This dark green fritillary shimmers with silvery highlights on its hind wings. They belong to the largest family of butterflies, the Nymphalidae, which is well represented in the Alps. About 5 of their species are large. This is one of them, a female. They're bigger than the males. A freshly emerged one, really magical.
Butterflies are not just beautiful, they're also useful. They flit from blossom to blossom drinking nectar, and many flowers are dependent on them for pollination. Usually they fly to the same plants, thus enabling them to propagate. The mountain Apollo, for example, a highly endangered European butterfly, favors the violet blossoms of thistle and oregano. At the Vanil Noir, these grow on the dry and rocky south-facing slopes.
We are located on a very sunny slope here. Butterflies are very temperature sensitive. They fly only when it's warm and sunny. The geological features here are unusual. This is a so-called karst mountain range. Its soluble rock absorbs water, which then re-emerges further down the valley, and its surface soil tends to be very dry.
Flora and fauna alike thrive on this soil. Flowers and insects that have disappeared elsewhere due to modern agricultural practices and land development. Europe as a whole has seen a dramatic decline in insects. This insect die-off affects everyone. Indeed, every third spoon of the food we eat depends on pollination by insects. You can still find intact nature in the Vanil Noir Reserve. Vincent Baudrat is committed to helping safeguard it. He also conducts studies on the incidence of butterflies at the various elevations. Further down below, in the valley of Mortaix, Rachel Roumeau and Cyril Canton, 2 mountain guides, are also on the way to the summit. They're scouting out a new hiking tour that takes its cues from legends, alpine farming, and medicinal herbs.
Yes, it tastes great.
It sure does, doesn't it? Caraway is delightfully fresh tasting when it's hot outside.
Really wonderful. No, caraway in one's hair. A flower wouldn't be bad, but caraway.
Rachel is a member of Pro Natura, which owns 2/3 of the Vanil Noir Reserve. She's always discussing with Cyril the benefits of having alpine farmers in this reserve. Down here in the transitional zone, farm animals are tolerated, but environmentalists would prefer not to see them further up the mountain.
La flore, elle est beaucoup plus sensible en haut.
At higher altitudes, the flora is much more sensitive. And if livestock is brought up here, fertilizer in the form of cow pats would be introduced to the alpine meadows. It changes the soil's pH value. The soil is enriched. And this is a bad thing because the many flowers that, like dry meadows, would disappear.
But alpine farming's been around for thousands of years, much longer than the nature reserve. Even according to a local legend centered on dwarfs, the meteoroids, alpine farmers have been part of the Vanil Noir for ages.
When cheesemakers arrived in the mountain valleys a long time ago, the meteoroids were already there. They welcomed the farmers and taught them everything they needed to know about local flowers and medicinal herbs. They also taught them how to make cheese. They shared a peaceful coexistence, and the meteoroids were so diligent and hardworking that we actually had time to sit in front of our huts, smoke a pipe and watch the time pass.
The alpine farmers cut down forests and installed pastures on which the alpine flora was first able to take root. They created the cultivated landscape that we now take for granted. Echoing the legend of the dwarfs, they lived in harmony with nature. The same nature that presents itself in the Vanil Noir Reserve today, in all its ruggedness and beauty. Cyril relates the legend of the dwarfs to the hikers he guides as an example of how to treat nature with respect.
We lived in peace and harmony with the meteoroids, but then one day the Capuchin monks arrived, and very soon they grew envious of the dwarfs because we always gave them the best we had out of gratitude. First they told us that the meteoroids are the devil incarnate. You must chase them away, they told us. So we did what we do best. We covered our ears. Then the monks got louder, yelling, "These meteoroids must be frightened off." But we told them that we couldn't do this because they wouldn't like it and would concoct mischief in revenge. And so the monks told us, "No problem, we know some magic formulas. We'll chase them high up into the mountains."
According to legend, to this day, the meteoroids tend their gardens with lavish care high up in the mountains. But at the foot of the mountain, human intervention is called for. It's a responsibility that the pro-natura environmentalists have been assuming for over 30 years. They're trying to prevent the gradual disappearance of indigenous nature. With their nature reserve, they hope to safeguard this area's unique natural heritage. It hosts such treasures as orchids and the caterpillars of rare butterflies. But you can also find more common types here, such as the bloody cranesbill, as well as a great number of insects, a wide and exceptional biodiversity that's not often found these days. Hikers may observe nature from the designated trails only. Picking the breathtaking flowers is strictly prohibited. This unusual beauty is also what draws Gregor Kozlowski, an environmental biologist who has been studying Fribourg flora for 25 years. The Vanil Noir is of particular interest to him. Flowers whose indigenous home is in the Mediterranean region can be found growing on a sunny slope here, along with dragonhead, which is also endangered across Europe. Over-fertilization and intensive grazing is taking its toll.
It's a relic, a plant that most likely was introduced here thousands of years ago and survived thanks to outstanding climatic conditions. This demonstrates the importance of such sun-drenched slopes. Unique and boasting a great variety of species, they are indeed very rare, and thus one of the Vanil Noir Reserve's true highlights.
Every 5 years, the scientist puts a spotlight on the most diverse biotopes of the Vanil Noir for stock-taking purposes. Thanks to the various climatic zones, the diversity here is astonishing. Even the perennial yellow woundwort, which is native to southern Europe, thrives in lower regions of the Vanil Noir.
This area features an extraordinary wealth of varieties. It's like experiencing a condensed journey from the Mediterranean to the Arctic. The higher you climb, the cooler and wetter it gets. It offers a unique opportunity to encounter various climatic zones in just one day. If you were to travel to Northern Europe, it would take thousands of kilometers to experience this kind of plant species range. Here, all it takes is a few kilometers straight up. An incredible climatic, geographical journey.
Barely 100 meters higher up, the Vanil Noir shows a completely different face. An ancient sycamore maple forest. Twisted, avalanche and rockfall scarred trees. These are extreme environmental conditions against which conifers have to pit themselves here on this scree slope. Thanks to the forest's perilous location, however, it's also untouched by man.
Behind me you can see clearly how malleable sycamore maple trees are. Not all species, not all trees can do this. It's down to selection. And it's also why only sycamore maples have managed to survive in this forest. Here you see, for example, some of the culprits, big pieces of rock. They tend to fall after it rains. Indeed, working in such habitats is not without risk. Especially after heavy rainfall, you have to be careful since these slopes are always working and moving and pieces break off. All these rocks come from above.
Clearings created by rubble and snow host their own particular plant species. Finding these clearings is often difficult, and the expedition leads through rugged, almost impassable habitats. But then he comes across one of the rarest plants in the canton of Fribourg, Cephalaria alpina. Mentioned in old documents, Gregor Kozlowski spent a whole week looking for one of these the first time he tried.
For us, this is a wonderful plant, really special. Over the course of several projects, we kept looking for one to show at exhibitions or in a book. It's as unusual as the wonderful untouched sycamore maple forests.
And it's not just this terrain that requires endurance.
Sure, another aspect of mountain life is the weather. That's also a challenge. Rain, sun, heat and cold. Especially when you're climbing and when you're on this geological journey from Spain to Svalbard. You need to layer your clothes accordingly. Rain gear is obligatory. There's no way around it.
These rarities could only be preserved thanks to the conservation area's strict rules. Special permission to leave the hiking paths is only given to a few experts. Daniel von Siebenthal, a farmer, also struggles with the harshness of the mountains. His herd of mother cows grazes at an altitude of 1,600 meters in an area maintained by Pro Natura. The farmer has to check on his beef cattle almost daily. He only manages to get up the mountain by car if the weather plays along. Living up on the Alp, however, is out of the question for him. The animals need salt once a week. Grass alone doesn't provide enough sodium. If it weren't for the Simmental cattle that graze up here in the summer, this area would be covered by trees and not flowers. The Nature Conservation Association actually had to recruit a farmer to bring his livestock up here in this remoteness. A win-win situation.
For the cows, it's definitely a paradise. They have a great life up here. For me, it's a paradise too, although it involves a lot of work. It's not a romantic paradise, but it's a great workplace. It's wonderful when you can spend some time up here.
Daniel von Siebenthal is aware of the discussions concerning livestock on mountain pastures. His cows feed on the colourful alpine flowers, but without the cows, the weeds would need to be picked by hand to prevent the forest from encroaching on this space. It's a compromise solution. Of course, the most precious spots are not open for grazing. Nevertheless, von Siebenthal does have to reach for a scythe occasionally. A poisonous plant, alpine ragwort, is invading the pasture, and it's dangerous for the animals. The government of the canton of Fribourg requires farmers to eliminate this toxic herb.
The canton wants the alpine pastures to look tidy. It would even allow me to use herbicides. In fact, one of the inspectors actually urged me to do so. But I'm personally opposed to using herbicides in a conservation area where there is so much water and so many runoff possibilities. And there's even a bog.
A rare raised bog is located amidst his pastures at some 1,700 meters above sea level. Cattle are not permitted to graze there, and trees don't grow there anyway. A deep love of his homeland inspired von Siebenthal to run his farming business in the spirit of the environmentalists, even though he's not an organic farmer. Preserving this cultivated landscape with the help of small farm structures is a matter that's close to his heart.
It is a truly fascinating landscape, a beautiful Alp, for my animals as well. My livestock offers good yields because the landscape is not too aggressive. It's mutually beneficial. And it's a good example of how conservation, animals and farming can find common ground. But that entails abandoning extreme positions. Ultimately, that, I think, is what is most important.
Close proximity to nature, experiencing it in its delicate but also rough and occasionally terrifying aspects, is still possible in this pre-alpine paradise. Sometimes the danger lurks much closer than expected. It looks like a black mamba, and it too is venomous. The Vipera berus, better known as blackadder. In the morning when the sun rises, this snake ventures out from a pile of rocks not far from the trail. Sylvain Dubé is not frightened by snakes, quite the opposite. From early childhood, he developed a passion for them. A professor of biology at the University of Lausanne, he specializes in vipers, since this snake species is particularly endangered. Black adders are common to the Vanil Noir reserve. Jointly with colleagues, Sylvain Dubé studies the effect of their little researched black coloration. It seems to especially benefit the females.
Ici, c'est une femelle qui est gestante. Donc on voit qu'ici elle est très fine. Après,
This is a pregnant female. Here, where it's thicker, one can recognize the embryos.
Avec les doigts, on peut compter le nombre d'embryons en fait qu'il y a dans la bête.
Their number can easily be ascertained by tracing your finger on the skin. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4, a relatively small litter of snakes.
Adders are very shy. They bite only when they feel threatened. An adder bite is generally dangerous only for young children and the elderly. Protected by special gloves, an expert is at no risk. In these rather cool pre-alpine temperatures, the females in particular benefit from their coloring. It allows them to warm up more quickly for hunting. To become pregnant, after all, requires fat reserves. But its color offers no camouflage protection. They must always be on alert. A stone's throw away, Gregor Kozlowski, the biologist, has almost reached the so-called Haarstrangrasen, masterwork meadow, a scarp near the sycamore maple forest. Its vegetation is dominated by hip-high umbellifers.
This is a lovely large umbel specimen. Umbellifers dominate this plant community. Laserwort belongs to this family. Bear's breeches grow here as well. We also have a beautiful plant, the sweet Sicily. On 100 square meters, you can find 100 different species. For lay people, that may not sound like much, but across Switzerland, even Europe-wide, it's one of a kind.
The Vanil Noir's soil is calcareous. It's poor soil with few nutrients and only certain flowers thrive on it. But those that do are more blossomy. Rock slips and avalanches on the slope keep trees away, so there's no need for grazing. A floral splendor can unfold here without being nibbled bare by animals. Rugged, untamed nature that sprouts from barely accessible rock debris.
Many botanists would consider this, and not the peaks, to be the true heart of the nature reserve. The summits are, of course, very interesting and exciting, but for many botanists, here is where the story of the Vanil Noir begins. It's unique because these biospheres have practically never been farmed, in part because it's too steep. These are truly among the last of Switzerland's natural habitats.
Natürlichen Habitaten, Lebensräumen der Schweiz.
Vulnerable habitats that have survived thanks to the conservation efforts. Remote meadows with poor soils are not economically viable for farmers. Subsidies aimed at preserving the beautiful alpine pasture land have lured a few farmers back with their cows, back to the alpine pastures that their kind created in the first place. Wild animals like the chamois also help keep the alpine pastures in good condition. These all-terrain grazers can be found nibbling on shrubs and young trees, even in the most difficult of locations. Rachel and Cyril have reached the valley of Bonneval at the Vanil Noir's southern slope. Many medicinal herbs grow here. Picking them is prohibited. Bitterwort is one of the better-known ones. The digestive is derived from its roots. Its leaf sheaves form cisterns, and little organisms live in the water found inside. After these die, their decomposition process provides additional nutrient salts to the plant.
This is the queen of the Alps. Its leaves form cradles that carry the gold spheres.
One of numerous medicinal plants.
Alone this little spot hosts a phenomenal array of species. We have the yellow foxglove, a heart medication. That's lotus. It's used to make sleep-inducing teas. It calms and also has an effect on the psyche, and it's used to treat depression.
Alpine herbs and flowers also taste good to grazing livestock. The main problem is cow manure. Wherever it accumulates, on rest areas for example, nothing other than alpine dock will grow. Nevertheless, an alpine pasture without cows is unthinkable for many.
If you ban the livestock, you would also lose a deeply rooted local tradition. In the past years, young alpine farmers have been returning and reviving this tradition. It's very nice to see. When they make cheese, they barely speak a word. It's like a dance around the cheese kettle. It's an ancient tradition, and I think it must be preserved. After all, it's part of the landscape.
Cheese making at 1,800 meters above sea level. Life on an alpine pasture the way it once was, at least one summer long. René Reynaud lives this life with his wife Hélène, along with their children and grandchildren. He puts his heart and soul into living here. They produce the alpine cheese Etivas. Their son Martial is proud of the traditional hard cheese they make. It's Switzerland's first cheese to receive the protected designation of Origin Award. And this entails having to process their own alpine milk on site over a spruce wood fire. For the alpine dairyman, this can be quite a challenge.
It's a cheese that is still artisanally produced. We uphold the old techniques, but we're also very dependent on nature and the weather. Over the past days, we experienced temperatures of over 30 degrees Celsius. This morning, just 15. We have to adjust to the circumstances to ensure the milk's composition is just right for cheese production. Yes, we are indeed dependent on nature.
Time for some breakfast.
Tea? Who would like tea? Patricia, would you like a cup?
Cheese and cream is great with tea. Everything else must be cumbersomely brought up the mountain. For this family, mountain culture is a philosophy of life.
I'm always together with my husband, along with the kids and grandchildren. It's the kind of life that we love. We spend 2 months up here every summer. It doesn't get any better than this.
The Reynauds produce 10 tons of cheese every year. The delicate flavour of Etivas cheese is down to the rich alpine flora. Each cheese wheel incorporates a piece of the mountain pasture and an old tradition.
We learned the ropes of cheese making from our grandfather and father, and we hope that the tradition will be carried on by our children and grandchildren.
And who else, if not the farmers, can stop tree encroachment on the remote alpine pastures? Trees don't grow above an altitude of 2,000 meters. Here, the mountainside is dominated by enormous boulders shaped by retreating glaciers. Slipping into the role of a sculptor, rain and meltwaters hew cracks into the limestone rock. Through so-called karst erosion, water penetrates deeper and deeper into the porous rocks and carves holes, Swiss cheese-like, into the Vanil Noir. A phenomenon that attracts such geologists as Sébastien Moreau and Martin Boschut to this area. They're trying to get to the bottom of karst erosion in the caves. One example is the little river, Rio de Mortier. It suddenly disappears, only to re-emerge 10 kilometers further down the valley. Sébastien from the University of Fribourg follows Martin, a cave explorer, into the cave of Binocle. The entrance is covered by snow, even in the summer. The Binocle cave was the first cave to be discovered on the Vanil Noir during a hot summer in the 1970s. Since then, speleologists have been drawn to this still poorly explored subterranean space, where new discoveries are waiting to be made.
Okay, the entrance has been cleared. One instantly feels a strong draft of air. Oh, it's pretty cold. Okay, let's put on our gear so we can descend into the cave system.
At only 4 degrees Celsius and a humidity of 90%, climbing down into the subterranean labyrinth is quite adventurous. Geologists are interested in the sediments, vestiges of an ancient ocean that once covered this area.
Je te redonne l'appareil.
The sediment layers here in the cave contain a lot of evidence. A cross-section of the sedimentary rock, which had never been done here before, shows stratification and reveals a lot of information on climate history and the occurrence of ice ages, for example. This provides terrific research potential and could advance our studies with regard to the climate that used to prevail here.
Boasting a length of some 10 kilometers, this cave system is one of Switzerland's largest. It wasn't until 1984, though, that individual caves could be connected by painstakingly clearing some of the blocked passageways.
The next room is interesting. It's really big. Ah, yes, it opens here. Yes, it's huge indeed.
A large leached-out cave hall helps geologists clearly visualize the secret of karst mountains. Limestone dissolves when it comes into contact with carbon-rich water. Subterranean passageways are thus created.
From a scientific point of view, this is very exciting. Other jobs don't offer this kind of experience. Just looking at this karst mountain surface already provides some clues. There are practically no rivers. Almost all of the water flows underground. Coming here to understand where the water flows is part of the research we're conducting and part of our enthusiasm for science.
While some of the researchers pursue their fascination below ground, others pursue it outside. Vincent Baudrat, the butterfly specialist, has arrived at the opposite mountain flank just below the cave exit. He's looking for a difficult-to-find large blue butterfly. The find definitely corresponds to the sketches in Baudrillard's butterfly guidebook.
This species lays its eggs on thyme. This one, for example, is growing. The caterpillars munch on its leaves. It's their fodder plant. And once the infant caterpillar has grown a bit, it lets itself drop to the ground and waits for a particular type of ant to come by and take it to the ant colony. The caterpillar produces an attractant for this purpose. Drawn by the smell, an ant will take the caterpillar to its nest, thinking it's an own stray grub.
Elle l'embarque et la met dans la fourmilière.
Once the caterpillar has turned into a pupa and then into a Eurasian large blue, it must escape the colony quickly to avoid being recognized as a parasite. Further up mountain, another caterpillar is satisfying its voracious hunger. It's the caterpillar of a spurge hawk moth. Their bold colors signal toxicity. The less colorful butterfly caterpillars only come out at night when their enemies are sleeping. And then Vincent Baudrilard sets out on the last leg of his journey. Only few butterflies can survive at an altitude of 1,800 meters above sea level, near the scree fields. One of them is the endangered Damon blue. Preserving the shrinking populations of such beauties is what drives butterfly enthusiasts.
It's critical that these pastures are grazed by livestock to keep them open. Unfortunately, nobody is interested in them because these remote spots are unprofitable. Farmers want maximum revenues, and thus these inaccessible meadows are being neglected. To protect biodiversity, grazing these areas in future is vitally important, even if it costs money. Otherwise, forest will replace the pastures.
Another appeal for the preservation of alpine farming. It's a matter of balancing the pros and cons. Cattle farming protects against the encroachment of forests, but at the same time, cow dung limits biodiversity. Having climbed above the timberline, Gregor Kozlowski, the biologist, has almost come to the end of his journey to the Arctic. What butterflies on the scree slope are to Vincent Baudrilard are to him the flowers in this remote biotope.
I'm absolutely delighted. We found one of the most important pre-Alp species. This is the white-blossomed alpine poppy. Really beautiful and currently in full bloom. And I'm excited about what else there is to discover here as we get closer to the top.
Alpine poppy grows almost exclusively in remote and unstable limestone scree slopes in the western Pre-Alps, where falling rocks are a normal occurrence. This little researched phenomenon is what Gregor Kozlowski is dedicating his new research project to.
Yes, it's really surprising, even incredible, how such a delicate little plant, relatively little plant, can survive here. But in fact, all of the alpine poppy species have chosen precisely such habitats. Not just in Switzerland, not just in the canton of Fribourg. Related species live on scree slopes in the Carpathian Mountains and elsewhere too.
Next comes the last and steepest part of the climb to just below the summit of the Vanil Noir, the trip's highlight. For plant enthusiasts, this section of the mountain is equivalent to the Arctic. During the Ice Age, mountain peaks rose out of the glacier at an altitude of almost 2,300 meters. Scientists believe that, to this day, one could theoretically find plants that survived the Ice Age, concealed in so-called snowbeds. One of these plants is purple mountain saxifrage, a true master of survival. And then, following an extensive search, Gregor Kozlowski discovers another dwarf plant.
Botanists and biologists don't just have an eye for the spectacular. Many spectacular things are, so to say, concealed. And one of them is a very special plant, a dwarf willow, the world's smallest tree. And indeed, it is no bigger than half a centimetre. And right now, it's in bloom. Trees and shrubs this tiny are definitely very special. This dwarf willow is a typical find in such snowbeds.
During the course of evolution, this ground-hugging little tree with a real stem has adjusted perfectly to the rough climate, and its tiny little stems grow underground. Kozlowski's excursion ends with this tiny little tree at the foot of the great Vanil Noir, in an oasis of peace amidst the beautiful alpine panorama. Evenings, practically no one is out and about up here on the Vanil Noir. With one last look at the alpine ibex, gamekeeper Patrick Romanons is calling it a day. All the way on top of the rock summit, which only few hikers reach, you can feel quite lonely, but in a positive way. Only the meteoroids, the dwarfs that were chased away by the monks, venture out in the evening and engage in all kinds of mischief. If you listen carefully, you can make them out. That, in any case, is what the mountain guide Cyril, who's just arrived at the mountain hut, is convinced of.
Have you seen all the rocks from the Ice Age?
These rocks were thrown down here by the meteoroids. There's one thing that really gets them laughing. That is throwing a rock down the mountain. As the rock tumbles, it carries more and bigger rocks with it. This really delights them. So, if at the end of the day you hear rocks tumbling, you might hear some laughter. Then, that will definitely be the meteoroids.
But the meteoroids are also guardians of the mountains. It's very important to them that people treat their uniquely beautiful yet fragile nature with respect. This is something they have in common with Rachel and Cyril, who want the Vanil Noir to be spared mass tourism. Indeed, mass tourism is already putting pressure on the Alps.
I hope that we can preserve all this in the future too. Nature doesn't belong to us. We belong to nature. We have to find a reasonable equilibrium between the two.
Finding this equilibrium between man and nature drew me to this profession. We are always talking about sustainability. For me, this gets down to two basic principles: responsible behavior and a critical spirit. And you have to have a critical spirit when you come here, not just today, but also in the future. That's important.
To preserve one of the last nature wonderlands in the heart of Europe, at a mountain that delights so many nature enthusiasts.